When a black CEO goes undercover in her own company, her racist manager humiliates her, assuming she's a nobody. But when she reveals her true identity in front of everyone, the way she takes him down will leave you speechless. You won't believe how this story ends. It was a crisp Monday morning, the kind of day that promised productivity and ambition. Yet, for Maya Carter, the newly appointed CEO of one of the country's top retail chains, the day held a heavier purpose. Maya, a striking black woman in her mid-30s, had climbed the corporate ladder with grit and brilliance, shattering glass ceilings at every turn. But today wasn't about sitting in the corner office or finalizing million-dollar deals. It was about seeing the truth behind the polished image of her company. Dressed in simple jeans and a faded sweater, Maya blended into the workforce seamlessly. Her usual power suit was replaced with casual attire, and her sharp heels were swapped for sneakers. This wasn't the Maya who graced Forbes's top 30 under 40. This was Maya the observer. She was determined to see how her employees, especially management, treated the little people. As she walked into the bustling corporate office of Infinity Retail Incorporated, she felt a strange mix of nerves and determination. This company was her legacy to protect, but whispers of toxicity in its ranks had reached her ears. She needed to know the truth firsthand. Maya entered the lobby, clutching a file and a clipboard. The receptionist barely glanced up as she mumbled, "New hire?" Maya nodded silently, suppressing a smile. She was used to grand introductions and handshakes with board members. Today she was just Maya from admin support. Walking past rows of cubicles, she noticed the quiet dynamics at play. Employees avoided eye contact with management, their shoulders hunched under invisible burdens. Whispers and stifled laughter echoed from one corner, where a few mid-level managers sat, sipping coffee. She caught snippets of conversation. God, people like her are always so lazy. Maya frowned but kept moving. When she finally reached the main office, a tall man with a smug grin blocked her path. His badge read, "Michael Trent, Manager." He looked her up and down, his lips curling into a smirk. "Lost, sweetheart?" he asked, his tone drenched in condescension. Maya straightened her posture, meeting his gaze calmly. "I'm supposed to report here for my first day," she replied. Michael scoffed, shaking his head. "Figures. HR sends me another one of you people. Can't get competent help these days, huh?" He waved dismissively toward a desk near the break room. "Sit there. Don't bother anyone and we'll get along just fine." Maya felt a pang in her chest, but she said nothing. She quietly walked to her assigned seat, her mind racing. She had anticipated some level of unprofessionalism, but this blatant racism was more than she'd expected. As the hours dragged on, Michael didn't let up. He barked orders at her, gave her the most menial tasks, and loudly commented about certain types being unfit for professional environments. Each word stung, not because Maya was hurt, but because she knew others had likely endured this treatment for far too long. At lunch, she sat alone in the break room, observing the interactions around her. Employees avoided Michael, exchanging uneasy glances whenever he walked by. She noticed one young woman spilling coffee on her desk, her hands trembling as Michael berated her loudly for wasting company resources. Maya clenched her fists under the table. She had seen enough for today. As the sun began to set, she walked out of the office with her head high, her heart heavy, and her mind made up. Tomorrow, she would push the limits of Michael's disrespect. She wanted to see how far his behavior could go before revealing the truth. Because when the truth came out, it wasn't just Michael who would be shocked. It would be the entire office. The next morning, Maya arrived early, taking her same unassuming seat near the break room. She had dressed a bit more casually today, simple flats and a cardigan, to make herself appear even less threatening. Her goal wasn't just to observe Michael, but to challenge his biases by remaining silent and letting him reveal his true character. It didn't take long. Michael strolled into the office with his usual air of superiority, clutching a coffee cup and barking orders at a junior employee before even reaching his desk. His booming voice cut through the quiet office, making heads turn as he muttered complaints about lazy staff and dead weight. "Hey you," he snapped, pointing at Maya from across the room. "What's your name again?" "Maya," she replied evenly, keeping her tone polite. "Right, Maya." He said her name like it was an inconvenience to remember. "We've got a staff meeting in 5 minutes. Make yourself useful and grab coffee for everyone. Cream and sugar's on the counter. and don't mess it up. Maya hesitated for a split second, biting back a sharp retort. She reminded herself why she was here. Rising from her desk, she nodded and headed for the break room, catching the snickers of a few employees who watched the exchange. As she prepared the coffee, she overheard Michael speaking with another manager in hushed but clearly audible tones. "Why does HR keep sending me these types?" Michael said, exasperated. "They're always so slow and clueless. Bet she won't last a week." The other manager chuckled nervously, clearly uncomfortable but unwilling to challenge Michael. Maya's hands trembled slightly as she poured the coffee, not out of fear but from sheer anger. She took a deep breath, reminding herself to stay composed. This wasn't about her feelings. This was about exposing a toxic culture that needed to change. When she returned with the coffee, Michael didn't even thank her. Instead, he pointed to a chair in the back of the meeting room. "Sit there. Just listen. We don't need any input from you." The meeting began, and Michael took center stage, his tone dripping with arrogance as he rattled off sales figures and delegated tasks. Maya noticed how he spoke to different employees, friendly and encouraging to some, but dismissive and curt to others, especially the junior staff and employees of color. "Look," Michael said at one point, smirking, "some of you need to pull your weight around here. We're not running a charity. If you can't handle the pressure, maybe you're in the wrong job." His gaze flicked to Maya briefly, and the implication was clear. She didn't look away, meeting his stare with quiet defiance. As the meeting wrapped up, Michael motioned for her to stay behind while the others filed out. "You," he said, pointing at her. "We need to talk." Maya stayed seated, her expression calm, though her heart raced with anticipation. She could feel the tension in the air, the moment building towards something inevitable. Michael leaned against the table, towering over her. "Listen, Maya. I don't know what HR told you, but we don't have room for slackers around here. You're going to need to prove you can keep up." "I understand," Maya said simply, refusing to rise to his bait. Michael smirked, clearly mistaking her calm demeanor for submission. "Good. Because honestly, I've seen your type come and go. They show up with big talk but can't handle the real work." Words hung in the air like a slap. Maya felt the sting, not for herself but for every employee who had endured this kind of treatment, without the power to fight back. Michael leaned closer, his tone dropping to a sneer. "If you want to stick around, maybe try working harder and talking less. Otherwise, don't expect to last long." Maya gave a small nod, biting back the urge to snap. "Thank you for the feedback," she said, her voice even. As Michael walked away, satisfied with his performance, Maya sat still for a moment, her fists clenched under the table. The mask was slipping, and Michael's true colors were on full display. What he didn't know, what no one in the office knew, was that the clock was ticking on his reign of terror. Maya wasn't just documenting his behavior, she was planning her reveal. And when the moment came, it wouldn't just be Michael left stunned, it would be every single person in that office. The following day, Maya arrived with a renewed sense of purpose. She knew Michael's ego would push him further, and she was ready to see just how far he would go. Every interaction, every insult, every instance of disrespect would be another nail in the coffin of his career. As soon as she walked into the office, she felt Michael's eyes on her. He wasted no time calling her over to his desk. "Hey, Maya," he said loudly, ensuring the surrounding employees could hear. "I've got a pile of reports that need sorting. Do it by lunch. Oh, and don't mess it up like yesterday's coffee order." Maya clenched her jaw, but kept her tone calm. "Sure. Where are the files?" Michael gestured lazily at a stack of papers on his desk, not even looking at her. "Right here. You do know how to read, right?" A few employees chuckled nervously, their faces betraying their discomfort. Maya noticed a younger black employee near the back of the room, her hands gripping the edge of her desk tightly, her head bowed. It was clear this wasn't the first time someone had been the target of Michael's degrading remarks. "Got it," Maya replied evenly, taking the files and heading back to her desk. For the next few hours, Maya focused on the reports, but her mind was elsewhere. She could feel the tension building around her, the silent witnesses who avoided eye contact with her, afraid to speak up. It wasn't just Michael who needed to be held accountable. It was the entire culture of silence that allowed his behavior to thrive. Just before lunch, Michael stormed over to her desk, his face twisted in frustration. "What's taking so long?" It's not rocket science. Maya glanced up, meeting his glare. I'm almost done. Just double-checking for accuracy. Michael laughed, shaking his head. Accuracy, please. I've seen people like you try to be perfect to overcompensate, but it never works. Just get it done and stop wasting time. His words hit like a punch, but Maya stayed composed. She knew that every second she endured this would make her reveal that much more powerful. Later that afternoon, Michael called an impromptu meeting in the break room. Maya joined the group of employees, standing near the back to observe. All right, listen up, Michael began, pacing in front of the group. We've got deadlines coming up, and I need everyone on their A-game. That means no slackers, no excuses, and no mistakes. If you can't handle it, maybe this isn't the place for you. His gaze lingered on Maya, his smirk growing. And some of you are already skating on thin ice. Isn't that right, Maya? The room went silent. Maya could feel the eyes of her co-workers on her, some sympathetic, others nervous. Michael crossed his arms, clearly enjoying the moment. What do you think, Maya? You think you can keep up, or should I start drafting your resignation letter now? A few employees stifled gasps, their discomfort palpable. Maya took a deep breath and smiled slightly. I'll do my best, she said calmly. Michael chuckled and turned back to the group. That's what I thought. Let's get back to work. As the group dispersed, Maya noticed the younger black employee lingering nearby. A name tag read, Renee. Renee approached hesitantly, her voice barely above a whisper. I'm sorry you had to deal with that, Renee said, her eyes darting nervously. He's always like this. I thought about saying something, but it's just easier to keep quiet. Maya placed a reassuring hand on Renee's shoulder. Don't apologize. People like him thrive on fear and silence, but trust me, it won't last forever. Renee's eyes widened, a glimmer of hope breaking through her apprehension. You really think so? Maya nodded. I know so. Just wait. By the end of the day, Maya had endured enough to confirm what she already knew. Michael's behavior wasn't just unprofessional. It was toxic, discriminatory, and deeply ingrained. But tomorrow would be different. Tomorrow, the tables would turn. As she left the office, she glanced back one last time, her resolve stronger than ever. The stage was set, and the curtain was about to rise. The morning air was thick with anticipation as Maya walked into the office, her heart steady and her plan firmly in place. Today was the day Michael Trent's unchecked arrogance would meet an immovable force. Dressed in the same modest attire as before, Maya sat quietly at her desk, observing the office as it buzzed with the usual nervous energy. Michael was already in full swing, barking orders and making sarcastic remarks to anyone within earshot. As he strutted across the office like he owned it, Maya couldn't help but marvel at his ignorance. He had no idea that by the end of the day, his world would be turned upside down. Around mid-morning, Michael approached her desk with a smirk. Hey, superstar, he sneered, tossing a stack of papers onto her desk. Think you can handle these without messing up? Or should I double-check everything for you? Maya looked up calmly, her expression unreadable. I'll manage, thank you. He chuckled and leaned in closer, lowering his voice so only she could hear. You know, I've been doing this a long time. People like you always think you can play in the big leagues, but you're better off sticking to the basics. Leave the real work to those of us who know what we're doing. Maya's chest tightened, but she refused to flinch. Noted, she said, her voice even. Michael grinned triumphantly, mistaking her restraint for submission, and walked away. By noon, the office was called into the large conference room for a special announcement. Maya, knowing what was about to unfold, kept her composure as she took a seat near the back. Michael stood at the front, clearly in his element, making small talk with the senior managers. All right, everyone, settle down, he began, clapping his hands together. We've got some important updates today, but first, I want to recognize the hard work of this team. Well, most of this team. His eyes flicked briefly toward Maya, his smirk firmly in place. The room filled with uncomfortable laughter, and Maya could see the tension on her co-workers' faces. Michael continued, You know, it's not easy keeping everyone in line, but someone has to do it, and I think we all know who's been pulling their weight and who hasn't. Just as he was about to launch into another of his condescending rants, the door to the conference room opened, and a senior HR representative stepped in. Followed by a few members of the executive team, the room fell silent. Michael's confident demeanor faltered slightly as he looked at the group. I wasn't expecting you all," he stammered. The HR rep smiled politely. "Thank you, Michael. We'll take it from here." Michael stepped aside, looking confused but not alarmed. The HR rep turned to the group and cleared her throat. "Good afternoon, everyone. We've asked you to gather here today because we have some significant updates to share about the leadership of this office." The tension in the room was palpable. Maya sat quietly, her hands folded in her lap, as the HR rep continued. "Over the past several weeks, there have been concerns raised about the culture within this office," the HR rep said, her tone firm but professional. "We've taken those concerns seriously, and after conducting a thorough review, we've decided to implement some major changes." Maya stood slowly, all eyes turning to her. For the first time, she allowed herself to stand tall, her presence commanding attention in a way that was impossible to ignore. The HR rep smiled and stepped aside. "I'd like to formally introduce you to Maya Carter, the CEO of Infinity Retail Inc." Gasps rippled through the room. Michael's face turned ashen, his jaw hanging open in disbelief. Maya walked to the front of the room, her calm and measured demeanor now carrying the weight of her authority. She placed her hands on the table and looked directly at Michael. "I've spent the past few days observing this office," she began, her voice steady but cutting. "And what I've seen has been both disappointing and unacceptable." She turned to address the room. "This company was built on the principles of respect, integrity, and teamwork, but the behavior I've witnessed, especially from leadership, has been the opposite of those values." Her eyes locked onto Michael, who was now visibly sweating. "Michael Trent, your treatment of employees, your blatant disrespect, and your discriminatory remarks have no place in this company, or anywhere else." The room was silent, the weight of her words sinking in. Maya continued, "Effective immediately, you are relieved of your duties. HR will handle the specifics of your termination, and I expect you to leave the premises by the end of the day." Michael's mouth opened and closed like a fish out of water, but no words came out. Finally, he managed a weak protest. "Wait, this can't be serious." Maya's expression didn't waver. "Oh, it's very serious. And let this serve as a reminder to everyone here. No one is above accountability, not even me." The room erupted into applause, employees cheering and nodding in agreement. Maya glanced around, her heart swelling as she saw the relief and gratitude on their faces. As Michael shuffled out of the room, his head bowed in shame, Maya turned back to the group. "Let's rebuild this office into the kind of workplace we can all be proud of. Together." The conference room was alive with an energy Maya hadn't seen before. Employees who had previously sat with hunched shoulders and downcast eyes now stood taller, exchanging relieved smiles. It was as if a weight had been lifted off the entire office. Maya stayed at the front of the room, taking a moment to let the applause settle before speaking again. "I know that what's happened today is a lot to take in," she began, her voice warm yet firm. "But this moment isn't just about removing a toxic leader. It's about starting fresh. I want this office to be a place where everyone feels valued, respected, and safe to do their best work." She glanced at Renee, the young employee who had confided in her the day before. Renee smiled hesitantly, her eyes filled with hope. Maya nodded slightly as if to say, "I told you things would change." Maya continued, "I'm not here just to lead from the top. I want to hear from all of you. Over the next few weeks, I'll be meeting with each of you individually to learn about your experiences, your concerns, and your ideas for how we can do better." A hand shot up in the middle of the room. It was Carlos, a longtime employee who had seen many managers come and go. "Excuse me, Miss Carter," he said, his voice hesitant. "Does this mean you're staying here with us?" Maya smiled warmly. "Yes, Carlos. I'll be spending more time in this office to ensure that the changes we need to make actually happen. But this isn't just about me. Change starts with all of us." The room erupted in quiet murmurs of agreement. Maya could feel the tide shifting, a collective willingness to move forward together. As Maya wrapped up the meeting, employees began filing out, still buzzing with excitement and relief. Michael, however, stood by his desk, furiously packing his belongings into a cardboard box. His face was a mix of anger and humiliation, his hands shaking as he stuffed files and personal items into the box. Renee and a few other employees stood nearby, watching him silently. For years they had endured his cutting remarks and domineering behavior, But now they simply looked at him with quiet satisfaction. Maya walked over, her presence commanding but calm. "Michael," she said softly, her tone firm yet devoid of malice. He looked up, his eyes narrowing. "What do you want?" he snapped, his voice filled with bitterness. Maya didn't flinch. "I want you to reflect on what's happened here," she said. "This isn't just about you losing your job. It's about understanding the damage caused by your actions, and making sure you don't repeat the same mistakes elsewhere." Michael opened his mouth to argue but closed it again, realizing there was nothing he could say. With a deep sigh, he picked up his box and walked toward the door. As he exited, the office collectively exhaled, as though releasing years of pent-up tension. Over the next few weeks, Maya immersed herself in the office's daily operations. She spent time with employees, listening to their stories, and implementing immediate changes to improve the workplace culture. Open-door policies were introduced, team-building workshops were scheduled, and a diversity and inclusion program was launched to ensure that the mistakes of the past wouldn't be repeated. Renee blossomed under the new leadership, stepping into a team leader role where her ideas and contributions were celebrated. Other employees who had once stayed silent began speaking up, their confidence growing with each passing day. Maya felt a sense of fulfillment she hadn't experienced in years. It wasn't about power or position. It was about creating a workplace where everyone could thrive. One afternoon, as Maya walked through the office, she noticed Carlos standing by her desk. "Ms. Carter," he began, his voice filled with gratitude. "I just wanted to say thank you for everything. It feels like a completely different place now." Maya smiled. "Thank you, Carlos. But this isn't just my doing. It's all of us. We're building something better together." As the sun set over the city that evening, Maya stood by the office window, watching her team laugh and collaborate in the distance. This was what leadership was about. Not just inspiring change, but being part of it. Her journey had started with humiliation and injustice, but it ended with hope and transformation. And as Maya turned back to her desk, a quiet smile on her face, she knew that this was only the beginning of what they could achieve together.